Bienvenue sur MAG, aujourd'hui on est au festival du film Fanstastique avec Gabriel Bier, director from the Attachment actually.
Yeah.
How are you today?
I'm well, thanks. A little tired, but it's a lot of fun here in Strabourg.
Do you like Strabourg?
A lot. I mean, I've only been here for like 2 days, but it's been really, really fun.
So we are going to talk about your movie.
Yeah.
It's a story about a possession story in a special environment.
Mm-hmm.
It's in a Jewish family.
Mm-hmm.
And there is this D-book.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're spoiling too much.
I'm not going to spoil too much, but
right.
Going to talk maybe about the fact it's also the name of your movie. I just made a few researches.
Yeah.
And normally D-book means attachment.
Yeah,
and,
it has like a... Yeah.
Why did you choose to talk about a story in a Jewish family especially?
Well, I mean, I'm Jewish,
Mm-hmm.
and I have always wanted to see like a fun sort of irreverent horror film or spooky film that drew on Jewish mythology in the same way that like a lot of great horror films draw on a lot of like Catholic, imagery and mythos and things like that, but in a way that's very playful, that isn't really about educating anyone about the religion or about having to be particularly faithful to the realities of the communities, but more just like playing around with it and the ideas and turning it into a fun story. And I'd never seen that, and so I thought I'd try to make it. And there's a lot of great Yiddish literature that I drew on in making it that had this sort of interesting, they're set in these Hasidic communities because that's where a lot of these traditions come from. And they draw on these myths, but again in a very like playful, funny way. So it's both very spooky and very creepy, but also like very, very funny and also sort of very loving. And it's especially a writer called Isaac Bashevis Singer,
Mm-hmm.
who's a Polish-American writer, originally from Poland but moved to the Lower East Side, and he wrote a lot about Jewish communities both in the shtetls in Eastern Europe and sort of the 1800s, but also about like Jews in Lower Manhattan in the sort of 1900s. And he would often draw on a lot of these same myths, and again with this like really funny kind of winking approach to the mythology. So that's the tradition I kind of wanted to try and make a film.
Mm-hmm. So that's why you decided to switch between different kind of register. Like sometimes you have funny moments,
Yeah.
and sometimes scary one.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's both because I also just like that in film. Like, I think some of my favorite films, including a lot of my favorite horror films, have these kind of genre blending moments. But also, yeah, I feel like it's the kind of film that benefits from being able to not just have one tone at a time, but to switch between them, and sometimes be both funny and kind of uncomfortable at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And also because it's, I think, fundamentally a love story.
Yeah, actually it is.
And for me, like, a love story has to be, as funny as it's uncomfortable as it is awkward, or in this case, scary.
Mm.
So that's one of the other reasons why it was really important for me that it had these different genres in it.
Okay, there is also something interesting about this love story. So I made a few researches about this kind of demon.
Yeah.
And I found a definition I would like to share, because it's not necessarily common for our public.
No.
So I just discovered about the D-book. It's written, yes, the D-book is either a demon soul, which is the body of a living person to atone for its sins, or the soul of a victim of injustice who enters the body of a loved one.
Yeah.
So different kind of readings.
So precisely because there are different kinds of readings, I decided to kind of just have my own take on it.
Yes.
Which was that I was more interested in the idea that we're talking about like the Hebrew and Yiddish origins of the word. It's about something that attaches itself to you or gets stuck to you.
Yeah, like this, I found a picture about this, an old one. I don't know where does it come from. I would like to show it to you. It's quite surprising. Yeah. It's like this. so we will show it for the audience. But
yeah, that's in the film.
This one.
That picture is in the film.
Yeah, it's in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they look at the book, that's the picture.
But that's why maybe I was okay. This one is interesting.
Yeah, it's in the film. So I became more interested in the Dybbuk as like less a specific person than a general metaphor for the kind of baggage that we all carry around.
Like a burden.
Yeah, or like just like the stuff you carry around in your life. You know, like we all bring, you know, if you fall in love with someone, that person is bringing stuff into your life that's not all just like good times, right? Okay. And you're bringing stuff into their life that's not all good times. True. And it's the same, you know, our parents bring their stuff into our lives and we accumulate stuff that we bring into their lives that isn't all good, right? And that's what I mean, like emotional baggage. And for me, the film is ultimately about like how far we're willing to go for the people we love. And so the Dybbuk, it was important for me, without giving too much away, that it not be too concrete who it was or what like the past was, because I wanted it to feel like a metaphor for those things. Like we all carry this stuff, and then those we love and who love us then have to decide whether they can help us carry it around.
Yes, that's true. There is a sentence in your movie about this, with the main character. Someone is just advertising, if you continuing this, you're about to forget yourself and to disappear in a sense. Yeah. So it's quite the same idea. Yeah. That's
like the thesis, and in this case, you know, it's read in a very brutal way, but I think ultimately it's a film about what we all do with people we love.
There is also a question I wanted to talk about, especially about the fact it's a lesbian story, and there is this religion point of view from the family, and the fact the Dybbuk might just be following you because of your sins. Is it also something?
No, not even in the slightest fucking bit. Sorry, okay. No, not at all. That's not the reading. The reason it's a queer love story is because one of the other sources of inspiration for it was Josephine, who plays Maya.
Okay.
She's one of my oldest friends. We've been friends since high school. Okay. And she, many years ago, told me, we were kind of drunk, and she told me these crazy stories about how she and an ex-girlfriend of hers, they were between apartments, both. And then the ex was like, oh, we can just stay at my mom's house until we can move out, or move into the new place. And so they did that, and that was kind of a nightmare. Okay. And I didn't use any of these specific stories, but I did tell her when she told me that, I was like, oh, I should write you a movie that's about this. And it became a very different movie once I realized that, like, there's this Jewish aspect to it that I could infuse with it, and I wanted to play with the idea of the Jewish mom as like this overprotective character. But even as the idea was coming together, you know, it was a story that was partly inspired by stories from a queer relationship, written for a queer actor. It just seemed strange for me to change the relationship. Like, why would I make that a straight relationship? And actually, precisely because what I was bringing to was I'm Jewish, so that's where I'm drawing on myself, and I'm already, you know, portraying a pretty fictionalized version of a Jewish community and like playing around a lot with my own religion. I decided I'm just going to bend it even more, so that I can actually, in this little community that in this little pocket that I've invented in this community, I'm also going to carve out a little bit of space where they can actually kind of have this relationship, which they wouldn't probably in the real world be able to have.
That's why I was wondering, because in most of the religions, homosexuality is not something allowed, or
and you know they talk about, you know, she's Leia isn't practicing anymore, and like, you know, the mom, there's a suspicion that maybe it's, you know, that her mom can be a bit weird about it, but then you sort of later realize that that's actually not what
she's not so religious, actually. It's not necessary for this reason.
Precisely, and I think, you know, I think it was important for me I didn't want to, because I'm not queer myself, I identify straight, I wanted to make sure that I didn't somehow try to make a film that was like about the queer experience, about encountering homophobia, like, because those are important, but I just don't know what that's like, and I don't want to try and render that. So it's important for me that the film, you know, the fact that they're queer, is just a part of their character.
Yes.
Like one of many parts of the characters. And in order to do that, I had to basically, make sure that in this invented little pocket of the community, there was room for a relationship that there probably wouldn't be room for in the real world,
Yeah, you're right. That's true. You were talking about some rituals too. Can you tell us more about this? Because I don't necessarily know the Jewish mythology or Yiddish mythology, and there was something with I think the closet, and
the cupboard is all that's. I mean, so half of the like rituals that you see in the film are things that I found during my research, and the other half is stuff that I invented, inspired by some of that. Like again, a lot of it's fictional, but the stuff about like salt in the corners and scrolls in walls and the book being open, those are Jewish superstitions. There are parts of the ritual at the end of the film which we're not going to go into too much. There are stuff like the black candles and like circles of salt and things like that. Those I took from a play called Dybbuk, that is a play from the early 1900s, late 1800s by a Yiddish writer called S. Ansky, where there's a description of an exorcism ritual. And so I took sort of some of his description, used them. But pretty much everything else is stuff I've then, drawing on those things, made up.
Okay.
For the purposes of the story.
Okay. I was wondering too. And maybe a question about your inspiration for this. So you were Jewish and you know all these traditions, so you were just adjusting them. But have you also made some researches about other possession stories in different religion, like as a Christian now?
Well, I mean, I've seen so many films about Christian, so many Christian possession stories in general. So in that sense, yeah, I did research in seeing them. I saw there's a film called Under the Shadow, an Iranian film, which it's not precisely a possession story, but it's like a haunting story. It's about a jinn that haunts a family. I think it's incredible. Also kind of does a weird genre thing in the sense that for the first 20 minutes it feels like almost like a social realist drama. Like it feels like new Iranian cinema, and then it just becomes incredibly terrifying. While still maintaining this sort of feeling of like that it's a drama. It's a very impressive film. But other than that, no, I didn't look into that many possession stories because, I mean, I watched a lot of different things for inspiration, but I rarely, both when I write and then in this case when I was prepping this, I try not to watch things that are too similar to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I try to kind of
to stay free.
Well, just because it'll get in your head a bit. Yeah. You'll start worrying that you're doing the same thing, or I feel like for me it's better to watch things that are kind of a bit tangential, or like a bit lateral. So like, for instance, when I was working on the first act of the film, I instead just watched like a bunch of romantic comedies. Even though it's not like a rom-com, I wanted to kind of get into that mindset to have something like that going on. So a huge inspiration is actually, Something Wild by Jonathan Demme with Jeff Daniels and Melanie Griffith.
Okay.
Great film. But it's like this kind of crazy love story that the two leads meet each other and start flirting within the first like 60 seconds of the film.
Okay.
And then it's just like off it goes. And I was like, is there a way to, yeah, I can do it like this and this. And then halfway through the movie, it suddenly becomes like a really kind of dark, tragic film. And other inspirations were like a lot of Brian De Palma movies, like Sisters, which isn't a possession story, but it has this kind of like, it also has this feeling of like the first 15 minutes, you're not really sure what kind of movie it is. And then it goes on to become like a crazier and crazier horror movie. So like I look less for inspiration in terms of the same topics that I'm working at than it's like, there's like a mood or a technique or like a structure that I'm interested in, and then that's what I watch.
Okay. And have you read some testimonies of people talking about this fact? Because I was just reading some stuff about the D-book, and it's because I found it's interesting actually, and I think it's quite different from a gin.
It's very different from a gin.
Other thing, because the D-book looks almost ready to talk, or just to talk, like to just I don't know, make a compromise, like a judgment.
No, and I think there's I think that they're in some traditions it's like that, in other traditions they're more sort of vengeful and evil. Again, I was less interested in basing it on one specific, you know, representation of the Dybbuk. I really was only interested in it as the sort of the metaphor of the thing that stuck to you.
Yeah, obviously.
And so in order to do that, I had to kind of move away from some of the great representations. Again, Bashevis Singer, who was mentioned before, he wrote a short story called The Dead Fiddler, which is probably the biggest inspiration for the whole film, really. But it's about a young woman who gets possessed first by one Dybbuk, then by a second Dybbuk. Okay. And the two Dybbuks are arguing, and then the rabbi decides that the only way to solve it is for the two Dybbuks to fall in love.
You're spoiling.
It's a very short story.
Okay.
But the two Dybbuks fall in love, and then the rabbi marries them, and then as their honeymoon, they get exercised.
Okay.
And I thought that was such a delightful story because it starts really kind of intense, and the descriptions of the young woman when she's possessed, a lot of that is what we used in the film to, you know, show how people change when stuff like that happens. But the fact that then it has like this weird romantic character to it and it ends in this weirdly delightful way, that it had all these like tonal shifts all within the, you know, like 3 pages or 4 pages, however long it is. I thought that was amazing. So that's the biggest inspiration.
Okay.
But yeah, other than that, I was, you know, even when it came to the Dybbuk stuff, it was a priority for me that I just took the things I thought was interesting, and then I left the other stuff behind. Like I had my own kind of story to tell, and I wanted to sort of take bits and pieces from the religion, from the mythologies, even from this specific, you know, mythological character, and take the stuff that I thought would help me tell what is essentially a love story, and anything that didn't quite work for that, I changed or I, you know, cut out.
And there is probably something different from other movie, especially the fact that almost everybody is quite used to see something like this. You know, there's a brother, it was the uncle, I don't remember. And it's a funny mood because they are just like, okay, it is like this, so we know how to do it in our family. It's something quite original. But I don't want to tell too much about the movie, so I think maybe I will interrupt just not to say to spoil the movie, because I have many things to say, but it will probably be too much for the public.
I think that's wise.
Okay, so thank you for everything.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. And are you working for next title or not yet?
Yeah. I've got a couple of things that I'm developing now, and one of them is I'm now developing with the support of the Danish Film Institute, who also financed this film. So hopefully that will go on to become my next project, but we'll see. Okay,
because we were just talking about Danish movies. Have you had the occasion to see Speak No Evil?
Yes, I did. I saw it recently.
It was quite excellent.
Yeah, very much so.
Very interesting too.
Yeah, very, very interesting film.
Yeah, Danish movie. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Et à bientôt sur Mag.